Uh, Parents, if you're game, send the kids up. I got a story for them they might find interesting. And while they're coming up, I should tell the adults, this is a hurricane story. I'm one of those guys, emergency management, they love me because I actually do get hurricane stuff together and I'm always ready. So I don't need to go the last minute to the store during, when hurricanes are on the way. Hey, thanks for being here. So if you could picture this story, this situation, I'm at a grocery store, right? And lots of people are buying last minute things trying to get ready for a hurricane, okay? You know what that means, right? You're trying to get water and all sorts of stuff. Well, it turned out all I needed was a gallon of milk because I had plenty of stuff at home for the hurricane, but I was out of milk and I drink a lot of milk and I just wanted a gallon of milk. So I go into this Publix and it's bedlam, all these people. And I go over to the dairy section, I get my gallon of milk and I walk back and I get in line. And you can picture this. There's a woman up front who's got this big cart full of stuff and another person and another person and another person. There's like 7 people in line with carts overflowing. And I got my gallon of milk. And it's going to take forever to get, to check out. And do you know what happened? There was a guy right in front of me, and he looked back at me and saw me with this gallon of milk and just thought I was weird, I guess. And so he says, "Is that all you got?" And I said, "Yeah, that's all I got." He said, "Well, you want to come in front of me?" "Oh, yeah, hey, thanks, that'd be nice." So I got in front of him. And as soon as I did that, the woman who was right in front of me now, she looked at me, "You only have milk?" "I only have milk." "Oh, well, why don't you come in front of me?" And one person after another, and I suddenly was at the front of the line. And I paid for my milk and left. Was that really not the nicest thing of those people to do for me? Yeah. And they were all total strangers, and I got my milk and went home. And I'm hoping they got all their stuff, and it turned out the hurricane didn't hit anyway, so it didn't make any difference to them. But anyway, I just thought you should remember that story. That's a nice story about being nice to other people, being aware and being nice to other people. Okay? Real good. No, they didn't. That's a good question. They had not opened that because they had so many people and nobody had 10 items. So I didn't have that option. Yeah, very good. All right, thanks for being here. We always appreciate your being with us. So I'm reading these readings early in the week, and as often happens to me, a different passage of Scripture seemed to be running around the back of my mind. You may have heard it. It's from 2 Timothy chapter 3. It says, "All Scripture is inspired by God and is useful for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness." All Scripture is inspired by God and useful, it says. Well, looking at the gospel reading, Mary and Martha, that makes a ton of sense. Isn't that useful to us? Any of us that have ever said the phrase or something like, "I am really busy." That story in the Bible can be very useful to us to take a look at that. What is Jesus talking about? What's he reminding us about? And to use that story to sort of maybe help our lives a little bit. But that piece of Scripture being in my head got me focused on the first reading. This is this little story. Abraham extends hospitality to 3 guys, 3 strangers. And it looks like this very simple little story. And I was just struck by the all part of this. All Scripture is inspired by God and useful. And I was like, well, what is useful about that story? What is it in that story that might actually help me and help all of us today? So I, kind of like a dog with a bone, I could not let this go. And it took days until finally I noticed something. So in order to help you through this, a little background might be helpful. what Abraham did, that is, he's outside in front of his tent, he sees these three guys, and what you and I would think would be just radical hospitality, it was not radical in that day and age. Abraham tells them, hey, I need you to do me a favor, I need you to stay, and let me serve you. Let me help you. Let me give you food. And mind you, he's not giving them, just, little cheese cracker things to go. I mean, he kills a steer. He gets his wife to make bread. It takes hours to do all this. They wait. He gives them this amazing meal. It is the hospitality that was expected in that day and age. And so you got to look at that and you say, well, clearly, what this is not teaching me is that later this afternoon, you watch somebody walk their dog in front of your house. You're not being called to go out and say, hey, could you wait a little bit and then go in and fix them like Thanksgiving dinner or something. So, it's even more harder to get a sense of what's going on for our lives when you realize, this is a different day and age. But it dawned on me that all Abraham is doing is what is expected of him. He's offering the hospitality that is expected in his day and age. And I thought, there's a thought. You and I, do we do the hospitality that is expected in our day and age? In other words, if some poor schmuck shows up behind you in the grocery line and you got a big cart full of stuff and they got a gallon of milk, would you let them go ahead of you? Would you offer that kindness? Do you let other people go in front of you like in traffic? Do you express gratitude? Many of us grew up with the two magic words, please and thank you. Do we use those words? Do we write the thank you notes? Do we, express our gratitude in some way? All those things, those just normal in our society gestures of hospitality. I thought that was a terrific question. I don't know how you're thinking about it, but as I was reflecting on my own sense of this, I realized I do a lot of that stuff, do it pretty well, but not all the time. There are just moments where I get kind of caught up in myself. I mean, I could picture there are oftentimes I go to the grocery store, I'm not sure I am aware of anybody else being in the grocery store. I mean, I just get in my head, as it were, and I just walk around and I do my thing, and if someone looks at me, I may not even notice. I might, if that story had been reversed, I don't know if I had been the last person in line, if I would have looked behind me and realized there was some poor guy with a gallon of milk. So it was a good reminder to me that, when I'm in these moments where I have a chance to offer some hospitality, some acts of kindness, maybe I just need to be aware of the opportunity, sort of tune in, so to speak. But then the other part of this would be to say, well, this idea of being aware got me thinking of the idea, well, what actually is hospitality? What is underneath it, if you will? And it is any moment that you or I put somebody else before us. You let somebody go in front of you in line. You, in that moment, say, hey, I'm in line. I have a right to be here, that kind of stuff, but I'm going to choose to let you take that. I'm going to give you a little bit of my time when I pick up the phone and call you or do whatever. In those moments of hospitality, we serve the other person. We put them in front of us. And then, do you recognize that? Jesus, and when he's teaching, what does he teach us to do? Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. He says, if you really want to find your life, you need to lose it. That phrase that never really, it's like, it sounds so weird. But the idea is like, if you try to go through life and you try to grab hold of life and you keep it for yourself, in other words, if you focus on you, if it's all about you, you are going to lose it. You're going to miss life. You're going to miss the joys of life. But Jesus says, if you will give your life away for the sake of the gospel, if you'll give your life away, if you'll put other people first, then you find life. And so in a kind of an interesting way, I realized that what Abraham is doing to these three strangers is actually teaching me and giving me an illustration of something that Jesus teaches a couple thousand years later. This idea that, no, it's not about us. It's about other people. And so I commend you to give some thought to this. In your life, your situation, teenagers around here, what's it look like for a teenager to put somebody else in front of you, that sort of thing. Give it some thought. It was interesting to me all week to be considering this, considering how this applied in my situation and in my life. And I will tell you, I had a terrific week.